Hello, Dr. Roger Elmer, Advanced Neurospinal Solutions and Functional Orthokinetics. I've been asked to do some short videos. This one is on a brief on white tissue. We tend to, when we talk about white tissue and structural correction and from a clinical point of view, why it's so valuable, why it's so important, we actually have some videos. I did what I called an appendix to the biomechanical videos, which actually had videos from Spinal Engine 2 that had Cheeto running and other things. We're not going to go that deep into it. When I do the whole video series, it's going to include that. So, but you're able to watch, and I do give some mild explanation, some minor explanation on it. But when we look at the fiber of your body has to change. It's one of the three tissues that must change in order for a structural correction to truly be effective. We have to do the white tissue, the red tissue, and the neural tissue. And in this case, the white tissue is collagen or tropocollagen. It's a coiled protein, and we need to elongate some of it, and some of it needs to get short. There's no energy that's needed for white tissue to get shorter. It just put it in that position, it will. It's the same thing as if we're at a church party and Jenna hits me in the elbow and breaks my arm, just as a party trick. And we have some brutal church parties. But if we put that in a cast for 6 to 8 weeks, when we put it out, I'm going to have trouble unbending it. It's going to look like a pencil, much like it is now. And as I start to try to move it, it's going to be very difficult to unravel because the fibers of the elbow have shortened. We call it adaptive shortening. Same thing if you get in your car and drive for a couple, 3 hours, you get out, your knees are very stiff. And you got to get out and move around. It takes energy to unravel them, but they're used to being in that unraveled position, so it's easy to get there. It's a lot harder when it's been in that position over a long period of time, years and even decades, to unravel it and get it to operate in that new position. Ask your orthodontist. This is orthodontics. And so what we're working to do is to unravel these fibers. If you have a tropocollagen that looks like this, and we do this, it's going to take some time for it to get used to being like that all the time. There's another way to do it that we do not recommend. It's called permanent plastic deformation. It's what happens in a car accident. When you tear a ligament, anytime you have a tear in the ligament, a sprain, and it disrupts the fibers. And that is more like this. This is permanent plastic deformation. We want to create this, not that. This is a new flaw that it didn't have. It also creates instability, sloppiness, for the future. That sloppiness we have learned, according to Spine 1999, that sloppiness creates a desensitization of the mechanoreceptors of that joint. When that happens, those nerve fibers that go to the brainstem stop working. Because of that, it stops the flow of what we call motor or efferent flow in that same motor unit. So now the muscles quit working, and it also goes so far as to say that it literally stops or turns off the reflexogenic protective mechanism of that joint. And so that's why you get injured over and over at the same place. So we're working to create adaptive elongation. That's what we're trying to create, which is the opposite of adaptive shortening and not plastic deformation, which is this. So that is what it's all about. Now, there are two numbers that you need to know when it comes to white tissue. 1/3 and 20. Write that down. 1/3 and 20. Now, ligaments we tend to call retaining structures, and they are, but we also tend to bounce off of them. If you ever watch the Olympics and watch Olympic lifting, the power clean, the snatch, when you're watching that, you'll notice that the bar bounces up all of a sudden. It lifts, it starts slow, and then bam, it explodes up, and then they duck underneath the bar. The reason it exploded was they're not using muscles to lift the bar. They're using their ligaments, the ones that are in the posterior, in the back of the spine. They're using the muscles of their abdomen to flatten the back from its curve and causing those spinous processes to open up. It's like this, but very rapidly. In under a third of a second. That's the 1/3. The number 1/3 is if I radically shift these, stretch them in under a third of a second, it becomes a powerful spring. So when the power lifter is doing that, or the cheetah on the veranda, he's chasing after the gazelle, as it launches this way, he's contracting his abdominal muscles and it's opening, and then it snaps back. And then he's using those muscles in the back to lordicize it, causing it to now, the ligaments in front are going to spring it back this way. So he's actually using his muscles to throw energy into the ligaments. And so that is the number 1/3. The number 20 is a rehabilitative number. It means 20 minutes. If we warm up the tissue and create hysteresis, which we have other videos that relate to it, those ligaments, the white tissue, is more prepared to plastically change, to elongate like this. And so when we lay down on the molds, we're going to elongate those fibers, but we're going to prepare them for the rehab. And the way we say it in our office from a clinical point of view is the prehab makes the rehab, and the better the prehab, the better the rehab. And so the white tissue, as we're going to change its shape, is going to allow us to change the shape of not more than just the discs, but in our case, we're discussing mostly the discs at this time. The more we get into aberrant spinal behavior like scoliosis, the more we're going to be talking about other fibers. If you're like this, we're going to have to unwind all the fibers that are connecting not only your joints and that, but also are wrapped around muscles and that are maintaining this kind of a posture. Because if we don't, it's going to take it right back to the way it was. Much like if you go to the orthodontist and you put the braces on, and in 6 weeks tell them to take them off. Will it be straighter than it was? Yes. Will it migrate back? Yes. Everybody knows that. Everybody understands that. Okay? And that's a brief on white tissue.